Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Bad Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, I need water in that 2.5-inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5-inch line. To the rope, to the rope, to the rope! 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear!
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we talk about firefighter and paramedic line of duty deaths to learn from these tragic events and potentially prevent them from happening in the future. I'm your host, Paul, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Doug and Denis. How's it going, Doug and Denis?
That's going well, Paul. I'm batching it with the family visiting my in-laws. I was just hanging out this morning and there was a big fire in New York, a fifth alarm, so I listened to that on the scanner for a little while. And yeah, just hanging out, talking fire stuff. What more could I want to do on a midday off? Back to work tomorrow.
Nice. Batching it, no one around. Awesome. You don't get that much anymore once you're retired,
Yeah,
right? You got to go away.
Imagine how your wife feels with you around all the time.
I know. She's not used to that at all. It's a problem.
Let's not go there.
Yeah. Denis, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Everybody talks about the Maritimes and, uh, hurricane season and all the damage that it does. And absolutely, that is the case. But fall and winter here is like a hurricane a week pretty near. I mean, technically it's not, but it's certainly full gales. And we've had, I think 10 days ago, we had gale force winds that were gusting well over 100 clicks. And here on Monday, for I think probably close to 30 hours, we had very high winds, again gusting to close to 100. And I had one of my neighbors texted me there yesterday and said, walking by there, and looks like some of your vent caps have blown off and they're lying on the roof. And I'd just been up there
Oh,
after
no.
after this fall, repairing a 25-foot section that blew off because I got one, two, three different peak roofs and they've all got ridge vents on them, right?
Uh-huh.
And I put a cord of what do you call it, asphalt sealer right in, so everything's nailed and glued, right? And that's what you got to do around here. And they're building houses, of course, after the fire, and there's 3 new houses up the street here, and I'd say about 15% of their shingles are all blew off
Oh, no.
on Monday, so off brand new houses.
They didn't get the heat to glue them down, maybe.
Well, that's the problem, yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy who installed them did not glue them. In some areas that experience high winds all the time, that's part of the code, right? That the shingles have to be adhered, not just self-stick, right? But if you buy a house that's built in the fall and the winter and it's shingled the fall and the winter, chances are pretty good that strong windstorm's going to take the shingles off. You need a good hot summer to have them all adhere properly. So yeah,
Yeah,
they're definitely suffering from that. So
I had that problem in the first house we built because the roof went on in the fall and they didn't stick down. I lived in Saskatchewan. It's a little bit windy in Saskatchewan sometimes,
yeah,
and and they got dust under the glue, and I had to go around with that blackjack and stick everything
yeah,
down myself. Yep.
yeah. Well, I'll tell you how bad it is. I keep caulking tubes full of roof asphalt, and I keep them in my furnace room so they're ready to go.
Nice and warm and ready to go. Oh
Ready to
dear.
go.
Is that a fire code issue? Blackjack in the furnace room? Maybe.
I would.
Uh,
No, it's not.
it's a residence. You can do
What are we
anything you
talking
want.
about this week?
Okay, this week we are going to talk about an accident that happened. This is kind of close to Denis and my heart because we were both kind of truck people for years and very technically oriented towards fire apparatus. On January 25th, 2009, 2 male career firefighters aged 28 and 45 died after falling from an elevated aerial platform during a training exercise in Texas. The fire department involved in this incident serves a population of approximately 20,000 residents in an area of approximately 126 square miles. Typical rural North American fire service. Small city department. The department had a total of 37 paid career firefighters and volunteer firefighters at the time of the incident. The fire department is supervised by an operations chief who reports to the city public safety director, who oversees both the fire and police departments in the city. In addition to the 37 line firefighters, the department has an administrative staff which includes the operations chief, a deputy chief who oversees training, and a fire marshal. The operations chief or the deputy fire chief also serves as the safety officer at major incidents. The apparatus operates about 10 fire apparatus that respond from 3 fire stations. At the time of the incident, one fire station was being remodeled, so the fire department was temporarily operating from 2 stations. 12 firefighters were assigned to the A and C shifts, and 13 firefighters were assigned to the B shift, a total of 37 firefighters on 3 shifts. The department can operate with a minimum staffing level of 10 on duty at each shift. The fire department provides firefighting, basic life support, emergency medical services, vehicle rescue, and search and rescue services to the community.
I wonder why B shift needs an extra person. They just need all the help they can get on B shift, I guess.
B shifters, yep.
Yeah, those B shifters, exactly.
I knew that was coming. Hey, by the way, apparently our old fire department's big into blue card now. They're all doing their training, and the new chief is an instructor and all over blue card.
Oh,
So
good for them.
yeah.
Maybe one day they'll learn how the basics on how to fight fires too.
Ooh.
So the training and experience in the state of Texas, specific training requirements are determined by each fire department. The combination fire department involved in this incident required both the Texas Basic Firefighter and Emergency Medical Technician certification, plus a high school diploma or GED in order to become a firefighter. The state of Texas offers a state firefighter certification, which is roughly equivalent to the NFPA level 1001 level 2 firefighter certification through a number of accredited programs at universities and colleges across the state. Additional training provided by the fire department involved mostly hands-on basic training in firefighter operations and tactics and procedures. The fire department's assistant chief serves as a designated training officer. Records provided by the fire department indicated that victim 1 had been a firefighter with the department since February of 2008, completed 101 hours of training. Victim 2 had been with the fire department since July of 2004 and had completed about 388 and a half hours of training. On November 19th, 2008, the fire department received delivery of a newly manufactured 2008 model 95-foot mid-mount aerial platform apparatus. Each of the 3 shifts received factory-authorized training, which was approximately 8 hours, including classroom and practical exercises on December 13th, 14th, and 15th. The hands-on training included raising the aerial platform into the air with firefighters in the platform. During the NIOSH interviews, some firefighters reported that the training was interrupted by response to fire medical calls, but the full 8 hours of training were received by each shift. Firefighters interviewed by NIOSH reported that fall protection was not used during this training. Both victims attended the 8-hour training session on December 14th, 2008, provided by the fire apparatus manufacturer, as did the firefighter who was operating the platform controls at the time of the incident. The firefighter selected to operate the platform controls at the time of the incident was off duty due to an injury to his hand, but attended the December 14th training provided by the apparatus manufacturer. When interviewed by NIOSH investigators, the firefighter stated that the day of the incident was the 3rd time he had operated the aerial platform controls. Most firefighters interviewed stated that they felt the classroom training was adequate. After completing the factory training, each shift practiced and drilled with this new apparatus as time permitted. Firefighters interviewed by NIOSH reported taking the apparatus out in front of the station and setting it up a number of times. They also reported taking the apparatus to the local football field, elevating the platform, and flowing water on at least one occasion.
So a very brief word about health and safety regulations. Fire departments in the state of Texas are covered by the Texas Commission on Standards in Education. The Commission publishes standards that are to be followed by fire departments in the state of Texas. Fire departments can adopt more stringent standard operating procedures, but cannot have a standard that is less restrictive than the state commission requirements. So in other words, the state commission requirements are the floor. The State Fire Commission has adopted some, but not all, of National Fire Protection Association, that's NFPA standards, pertaining to firefighting operations, equipments, and programs. So that'd be a fair number of standards, actually.
So this one hits me a little bit close to home, of course, because I sold and worked for manufacturers and distributors of fire apparatus for 25 years, and I did aerials specifically for about 5 or 6 years, where I was the aerial guy in certain regions of North America. I did lots of this training, delivery training, we used to call it, for various manufacturers that I sold apparatus for. And so this is pretty close to my heart that something like this happened. This could have happened to me, or it could have been people that I trained. I remember here in Lacombe, where I live, we got a new aerial, and we did the factory training, and then we went out and did practice with the factory guy. And then after that, we actually, before we put the aerial in service, we had a logbook, and all the operators had to have aerial training, the certification to run an aerial, and then we had to put so many hours on the truck with a logbook, and we'd go out and go to the high school or various places to do training and throw pylons on the roof and go get them and all those kind of things, just to get proficient at operating the apparatus. The apparatus involved in this incident, utilized by the fire department, was the first platform that they had bought, and was purchased to replace a straight 110-foot aerial ladder, so no basket. The configuration was a 2008 custom fire apparatus, 95 mid-mount aerial ladder platform. Aerial device was constructed of welded aluminum alloy extrusions in 4 sections, stabilized by 2 sets of down jacks and 1 set of underslung outriggers. All are hydraulically operated with an electronic automatic leveling system. The aerial ladder can be operated from each of the 2 ladder control consoles, one located at the base on the right side at the turntable, and one located in the platform at the ladder tip. Aerial ladder movements of raise, lower, extend, retract, and rotation are powered hydraulically with electric over hydraulic controls located at both consoles. This type of hydraulic control incorporates an electronic solenoid that opens and closes a hydraulic valve, directing fluid to the operating pistons or motor. An adjustable delay is incorporated in the system to reduce the shock load on the aerial ladder from the hydraulic valve operating in it from the fully closed to the fully open position, and vice versa. Unfamiliarity with the operational delay can cause jerky or unsteady movements when inexperienced operators handle the controls. So this definitely is a factor. The problem, the one reason is because you don't want to have hydraulics all the way to the tip, so they put electronic controls in for that. But also the weight of the device, especially fully loaded and or flowing water, if you were to reverse controls from full up to full down or full right to full left, the dynamic loading on the aerial may exceed the design parameters, and that's why they use these electric over hydraulic controls, sort of a 2 reason. And although they do prevent the aerial from hurting itself, the operator can if you're not careful with the controls, you can have some really wild rides on the ladder. Not that really affected what happened. The platform's constructed of welded aluminum, as I mentioned before, an aluminum sheet with approximately 18 feet of floor space. The NFPA minimum is 14, so it's bigger than the minimum. Platform payload is rated at 1,305 pounds without water, or 1,000 pounds of personnel and 300 pounds of equipment, because NFPA load ratings are always 250 pounds per person. So 1,000 pounds, 4 people, plus 300 pounds of equipment, or 850 pounds of water in the system, and 500 pounds of personnel and 300 pounds of equipment. The 42-inch high guard railing is provided around the perimeter of the platform, and there are 2 inward opening self-closing doors that are provided at the 2 front corners of the platform. There's 6 fall protection anchor points that are located in the platform, 2 in the front and 2 on the sides and 2 in the rear. There's an aerial man-saver bar, which is a spring-loaded bar that can only go up or in one way. to at the ladder opening, so that you can't fall backwards down the ladder. You have to physically open the barrier to come in or out of the platform. The platform, of course, has a water curtain nozzle underneath to provide fine water spray below the platform to protect it and the occupants from flame impingement. These are NFPA requirements, sort of.
So the structure that they were practicing on, and that was involved, as a factor in this incident, was an 8-story college dormitory building, and this was reportedly the highest structure in the city. So 95-foot mid-mount platform should be able to reach the roof of an 8-story dorm if it's parked close enough. The weather at the time of the incident, remember this was December, the weather conditions in the area were overcast with an approximate temperature of 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty cool day. 61% relative humidity, visibility was 10 miles, and the winds were out of the east-northeast, about 5.8 miles per hour. So winds, temperatures, and humidity were not really factors in this incident.
Yeah, all within the design parameters, for sure.
Yes.
I did lots of demos down in Texas in very similar instances. I did one time at a college. Uh, I don't know where, if it's the same place or not. And when I was doing the demonstrations with an articulating platform, we were up in the platform showing everybody how it worked and all that kind of stuff. And I felt a shudder in the truck. I felt a shudder while we were doing the movements, and we were up in the air with people, a demonstration. And I looked down, and there was people going in and out of the truck, closing doors, opening doors. So I suspected the shutter was somebody closing the cab doors. This type of aerial apparatus lifted itself completely off the ground, and the front cab portion, front of the apparatus, was hanging in a bit of a cantilever position. So sometimes when you bang the cab door, you would feel that in the aerial. So I suspected that was the problem. Anyway, I thought, well, maybe we better go down and just double check what's going on. So I, took the demonstrator, took the aerial platform down to the ground, got out, looked around, and actually what had happened, and the shudder I felt, was it was a college parking lot that was in very poor shape, and it was warm out. And one of the outriggers, I had not taken the time to center the auxiliary jack pad under the outrigger foot plate. I had had it put one-sided. It wasn't in the center, which usually I did, but for some reason I didn't do it correctly that time. And what had happened, because the load, the foot plate was off to one side on the auxiliary pad, the weight was more to one side on the pad, and the pavement had collapsed under the pad, and it had sunk down and slid over a little bit. And that's actually what I felt was the shudder. When I was in a position most over that one outrigger. So that was a very fortunate experience that it didn't get worse than that. And I was able to, reposition the outrigger pad, and we continued to do our demonstrations. So that's something critical. I always used to tell people when they're training is make sure you approximately, don't need to get the measuring tape out there, but definitely if you get them approximately centered on the auxiliary pad, it can lead to more even pressure on the ground under that pad.
I've seen some ladder trucks nowadays that you put the pad on the outrigger before you put the outrigger down. So it would
Yes,
always
the
be
Brontos
centered,
are a
I
lot of
guess.
Brontos are like that. Yeah,
Just thought I'd
they have
throw
little
that in.
When
slots, and it just kind of slides on.
Yeah.
the last aerial that I bought, we were concerned, of course, with winter conditions, and so the bearing pads that we sat on the ground, we actually welded cross hatches on the bottom of it to provide like cleats. So that kept the pad from sliding on the ground. And then on the top of it, we used, I think it was 3/4 inch square bar, and we picture framed the entire pad, probably an inch in from the edge, maybe an inch and a half inch from the edge. So that if it was wet and there had been eccentric pressure, like you were just talking about, Paul, the landing leg on the outrigger couldn't actually slide off the pad, so
Hmm.
it was contained. So we very much limited how much movement there was. So exactly for the reasons you talked about, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think you got that cross hatching idea from me, because we did that for
Yeah.
Montreal. on the bottom. So they wanted something to grip the pavement. And I remember saying to him, I said, well, you're going to leave marks wherever you set up the ladder, right?
And
We
it
don't
does.
care. That's public works problem. We don't care. We don't want that pad to slide on the ice. It's like, okay, it's your truck. No problem, sir.
And it does.
It does work well though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the trucks,
I
if it's
would
hot out, the truck's going to leave marks everywhere it goes.
I would never ever buy an aerial without doing that again. In
Yeah,
fact, I think
good.
it should be standard.
It should be. You're right. Okay. 3 days before the incident, on January 22nd, 2009, the on duty shift was receiving training in an unrelated subject from the operations section chief when they were informed by the chief that they should be doing additional training with a new aerial platform truck. The same night, the municipal fire department responded to a working structure fire at a local restaurant. Crews responded with the newly acquired truck. That was always my fear, is that we'd take the new truck out because it's sitting in the barn and we got a call, even if we haven't been trained. It had not yet been fully outfitted with all the necessary support equipment, so an engine was also dispatched so that firefighters would have access to the necessary tools and equipment. Ladder 1 was used for master stream operations at the restaurant fire during fire suppression operations. The electric motors that powered the monitor failed to operate, so the monitor had to be operated manually. Following the fire, it was decided by the operations chief that additional hands on training was needed to familiarize the firefighters with the operations of Ladder 1. So a training exercise was planned by the shift supervisor and company officers to give all firefighters on the shift more hands-on experience with Ladder 1. The next work shift was a Sunday, which meant there would be minimal traffic and activity at the local college. The fire department decided to take advantage of the light Sunday schedule and planned the training exercise for the 8-story college dormitory building that represented the highest building in the city. Those monitors for a few years had a lot of problems. One of the vendors I know had a problem where inferior materials was used on some of the gears, and they would strip out, usually when they were new, or they would jam all the way at the end. They have little magnets inside that tell the monitor its travel limits, and it would sometimes jam at the end of the stroke, and you'd have to go just move it off the end, and then it would work again until you could get it, serviced by a technician. So for the early electric monitors used to have quite a bit of problems, which 2009 isn't exactly early, but there was some issues with those. And they have a little Allen key that's sitting on the side of the monitor that you can use. The certain brands do, and you put that in the end of the motor drive and you can move it. Some other monitors, the gray ones, they have a hand wheel that's automatically provided, so you don't need a special tool. You can just grab the hand wheel and move the monitor manually if the motor decides to quit. Many firefighters don't know that electric monitors on the end of an aerial do not work directly off the truck power. There's a battery somewhere at the end of the ladder that stores, it basically works as a capacitor. It stores enough power so that the monitor can move, because the 100 feet of wire, or more than 100 feet of wire you need to get 12 volts to the tip, is incapable of powering the monitor. That draws too much juice. And so they usually have a battery, or if you have two monitors, two batteries that will run the monitor. They have to be charged sufficiently, of course. If the truck's out of service for a long period of time, that battery might go down. And also, about 5 or 7 years in, typically, if you're having monitor problems, that's usually the first place I would look, is that monitor battery might not be functioning. So just something to keep in mind without getting too technical. On Sunday, January 25th, all on-duty members of the fire department, 10 firefighters were on duty, assembled at the college dorm building at 1 p.m. for the scheduled training. A captain was serving as the acting battalion chief, and a driver engineer was serving as the acting captain to backfill for acting battalion chief. Ladder 1 was positioned in the parking lot in front of the dormitory building. The training exercise involved setting the apparatus up for operations, extending and setting out the outriggers, and leveling the apparatus, so practicing that. And then raising the platform to the roof of the 8-story structure. The first group of 3 firefighters entered the aerial platform and raised the platform to the roof using the controls located in the platform. And this was always quite a learning curve for firefighters when they had a straight stick ladder and now they're in a platform. So usually a learning curve for them to remember to look back, make sure where the ladder was, and to watch everything around them, because you don't have that field of view. The view is quite restricted in the platform. You can't see under you, and it's difficult to see each side, especially if there's a couple other guys in the basket with you, versus the guy at the turntable has an unobstructed view of the whole ladder, and usually you always have a person there to override and prevent you from hurting yourself, or warn you over the intercom or radio if you're getting near something, and those kind of things. So it is a learning curve for people that haven't experienced it. The firefighters got out of the platform once they got to the roof and briefly walked around on the roof, noting construction features, utilities, and other information that might be useful in the event the fire department had to respond to a call at the dormitory. Good idea, pre-planning. The firefighters re-entered the platform and lowered the platform to the nested position on the back of the apparatus. Two of the firefighters exited the platform while the operator remained in the platform to demonstrate the operation of the controls to the next group of firefighters who entered the platform. Second group of 4 firefighters raised the platform to the roof level, stepped out of the platform onto the roof. Briefly surveying the roof, the second group of firefighters re-entered the platform and began lowering it. They decided to set the platform on the ground to simulate a rescue procedure. The apparatus was positioned too close to the building to set the platform down on the grassy area in front of the dormitory, so the aerial ladder was rotated 180 degrees and the platform was set down in the parking lot on the officer's side of the apparatus, where 4 firefighters stepped out of the platform. The remaining 4 firefighters, who had not previously been in the platform, entered the platform. They decided that which one of them would operate the controls, and the aerial ladder was elevated and rotated to the right until the platform approached the wall of the dormitory building. The platform operator attempted to see if he could perform more than one function simultaneously: elevate, rotate, and extend the ladder. He found that he could not. He was informed by intercom that from the ground that he was at full extension. The operator observed that the inclinometer on the platform indicated the ladder was at approximately 71 degrees of elevation as he rotated the platform to the right over the parapet wall. The operator told the other 3 firefighters that the platform was too high above the roof for them to safely step out, so he wanted to lower the platform. The firefighters located on the ground, as well as the survivors located in the platform, reported hearing a sound like metal scraping on concrete, followed by a sound described as a loud metallic bang or thud as the platform was lowered over the parapet wall.
So it's theorized, I guess, later in the investigation that the sounds that were heard, this scraping and thumping, was the sound of a lifting eye. So the lifting eyes would be mounted to the bottom of the platform, where of course the operator can't see them. Was the lifting eyes scraping across the top of the parapet wall, which was concrete. And then there was the bang was caused by possibly the platform dropping down onto the parapet wall after the lifting eye cleared the top surface. So the platform would have dropped because there was clearly some weight on the lifting eye. And yeah, lifting eye is a couple inches, 3 inches, probably 4 inches tall, something like that. So the platform would have dropped that. So clearly the platform was putting weight on the parapet.
After lowering the platform, the operator observed the platform was resting on top of the parapet wall and told the other 3 firefighters in the bucket to stay in the bucket as he wanted to lift the bucket off the parapet wall. The platform operator reported that the platform did not move as he feathered, moved the controls gently, the elevation control in an attempt to lift the platform. The operator attempted to feather the control again, but the platform did not move. Thinking the platform was slow in responding due to the inherent delay, the operator held steady pressure on the control.
So part of the issue here, of course, is that the operator didn't realize that this lifting eye that he couldn't see, this was the left side lifting eye um, on the underside of the platform, was actually caught on the inside surface of the parapet wall. So if you're looking at this wall from the outside, you'll see that the wall continues up beyond the roof, forming a parapet, and then there's a cap on the top of the parapet, and then there's an inside part to that wall where it goes down to the actual roof, and typically this would be a foot or 2 feet or whatever the distance is. I don't think we get into that in this analysis. but the lifting eye, which would be the left lifting eye, there's usually two, one on the left and one on the right, was caught on the inner surface of the parapet wall. And he didn't realize this because he couldn't see it, and wasn't familiar enough with the platform operation to realize that that's what happened. And that his attempts to elevate the platform, um, because because of the way the aerial is operating on a pivot, as you try to just rotate it upwards, it actually will pull away at the same time. So that was causing the lift eye to be forced tighter against the inner surface of the parapet wall. So like take your fingernails and hold them on the edge of the table and try pulling away as you're pushing down at the same time, and you're something similar to that was happening. So it was only getting tighter and tighter against the parapet wall as he was manipulating the controls. After the incident, the investigators found scrape marks evident on this aluminum lifting eye that's mounted on the platform on the passenger side of the platform, so on the left side. The marks were both on the bottom of the lifting eye, and the lifting eye is just like a flat plate with a hole through it, and on its backside, in other words, the side that was against the parapet, suggesting that the lifting eye scraped along the top and then dropped over the parapet wall. Immediately after the incident, aluminum fragments were recovered from a gouge in the parapet wall by police detectives who were doing an investigation. There were also chunks of concrete that they could match up with the broken portion of the parapet wall. And these were found on the roof of the building, again by these investigating detectives. Concrete debris was also observed on the water curtain spray nozzle that's located underneath the platform. So this nozzle is pretty close to flush on the bottom, I guess. Maybe sticks out an inch or so. A little bit proud below so that any spray could come out. Usually the bottom of the platform is enclosed with aluminum sheeting, and this nozzle will come out roughly about the middle. So it looks like the water spray nozzle was also in contact with this parapet too.
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw some pictures in the social media feeds, but like you say, because he chose the control elevate, it pulled the platform back. He was already at 71 degrees, so if he's going to elevate, that's why it caught on that edge.
Versus
The
extend.
versus extend, but someone told him he was fully extended, so that's probably why he didn't try that, I'm guessing,
Right.
but
And then other
not sure.
alternative would have been to rotate slightly because only the left side
Mm,
was
that'd be
jammed. And
tough too.
yep, exactly.
The platform operator was standing at the center of the bucket at the control panel, leaning outward and looking down to see what was restricting the platform from moving. Victim 1 was standing near the platform door to the operator's right, and Victim 2 was standing near the platform door to the operator's left. The fourth firefighter, acting captain, was standing behind and slightly to the left of victim number 1. We'll put some diagrams on the social media feeds. On the third attempt to raise the platform off the parapet wall, the top inside edge of the parapet wall was holding the lifting eye suddenly and without warning broke, causing the platform to spring away from the building and then whip back and forth violently. 5 firefighters were standing on the apparatus near the turntable and were observing the operation of the aerial ladder as well as discussing the operation of the aerial base controls. 3 of these firefighters reported hearing the scraping sound and the loud thud. The firefighters also observed the aluminum ladder bowing upward and twisting severely to the left because it was caught on that right side, right?
Yeah. So these conditions that these firefighters that were on the ground were describing, pretty consistent with having the platform caught on the building's parapet wall. And they noted there was a bend in the aluminum ladder. Now, typically speaking, when these ladders are extended full out, you will see some arcing, if you will, of the ladder because it's loaded. And this is a 4-section ladder. 5-section ladders are even more flexible. Most designs, anyway. There are some that aren't so bad, but so you're typical of seeing that. But in this case, it was quite noticeable. So with more experience with this aerial, they might have known that that was not normal arcing. But these big cylinders, the lifting cylinders, are pushing upwards, and the platform is caught on the parapet, holding it down. So of course you've got opposing forces. So clearly there was some bending going on of the ladder itself, and they also noticed that it was twisting severely to the left. So that suggests that the left-hand side of the platform was being restrained, and so that's the left-hand cylinder being restrained while the right hand was lifting it. So you see the platform twisting off to the left. That's a huge warning flag that you've got, eccentric loading on the platform. And with four guys in the platform, it's a good suggestion that you've got something caught on something.
Yeah, I don't know what the capability of those lifting cylinders would be, but it would be in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000 pounds at least lifting force that the two main elevation cylinders would be able to lift. Because I know the one manufacturer I worked with, they told me they used to load truck bodies, like fire truck bodies, with aerials when they didn't have a crane in the yard. They would often use the aerial to lift the bodies on the truck. And I know I was told one time, like on a single axle aerial, a 75, how much weight is needed on the front axle of the truck to counterbalance the ladder if it's extended all the way and loaded off the rear. And I was told about 14 or 15,000 pounds was the minimum front axle weight to keep the truck, nose down, if you will. So I'm imagining the lift cylinders on a 95-foot platform would be in the 20,000 pound range capacity. So a lot of force there, 10 tons
Each.
each to lift 1,000 pounds at the end of a 100-foot ladder, basically, plus the weight of the ladder, times 2-to-1 safety factor structural, and 1.5-to-1 times stability safety factor. One of the firefighters standing on the ground actually observed the driver's side outrigger jacks on the side closest to the building lift off the ground. Other firefighters standing on the apparatus felt the apparatus rock and away from the building. One of these firefighters yelled for another to shut off the power to the platform control panel. A firefighter standing on the ladder reached to his right and shut off the control power switches, de-energizing both the base and the platform control consoles, but the platform had already broken free of the parapet wall. When the platform suddenly sprung free of the parapet wall, the ladder and aerial were propelled away from the building, and the four firefighters were thrown about within the platform. The platform operator himself felt himself slipping over the control panel and the railing as the platform whipped backward. He thrust his right knee under the control panel to keep himself from falling upwards and out.
Just kind of anecdotally, the operator who was operating the platform up on the platform, when the aerial snapped backwards away from the building, his hat flew off, I guess, was found on top of the roof because he'd been bending over the edge. So his hat stayed and he went with the ladder. The aerial ladder then bounded away from the building, and when it reached its limit of motion away from the building, it flung backwards. Um, the firefighters, of course, were then tossed to the back because it started to come back towards the building, whip back towards the building. So if you've ever had a long ruler in your hand and you hold one end of it and you wave it back and forth, that's essentially what was going on at the end of that aerial ladder. It was whipping back and forth. The operator was at the front of the platform when it whipped backwards, and like he said, he tried to keep himself from being thrown over the front edge. And then when it reached the end of its whip backwards, it reported that he left that position and then struck the back railing of the platform against the mansaver bar. So the mansaver bar prevented him from being tossed down the ladder itself.
So the ladder, which whipped back and forth back towards the building, tossing firefighters in the platform forward again. The operator was thrown against the control panel, striking his pelvis, and again felt himself falling over the railing. As he struggled to maintain the platform by bracing his knee under the control panel, he observed victim number one falling through the right platform door. Then he noticed a flash of blue in his peripheral vision to his left, which he immediately realized was another firefighter, victim number two, falling through the left platform door. As the acting captain was tossed forward in the platform, he observed victim 1 falling out of the platform through the right platform door. Just as he was falling through the door, it appears the acting captain's chest struck the intercom speaker to the right side of the control panel, knocking the acting captain straight down to the floor of the platform with his head and shoulders hanging outward through the now open doorway. The operator pulled the acting captain back into the platform, and the 2 survivors huddled together on the floor of the platform as the ladder continued to rock back and forth several times. They both observed that the platform doors were sprung outward. They are designed to only swing inward into the platform. That's part of the 42-inch continuous railing requirement, is that you had to have a railing all the way around, although doors swinging inward would be permissible. The one manufacturer I worked for, actually, for years on their older model platforms, would not. They still had a railing around. The railing was 2 long tubes on each side, so you would lift up that portion of the railing and then open the door to get out, and then you would close the door and you'd push it back down. And salesmen always thought that railing was annoying because you had to lift this thing up and hold it up while you went in and out of the platform, and so this design, of course, didn't require that railing to be there because the doors could only open inwardly. They both observed that the platform doors were sprung outward. When the aerial ladder came to rest, it was estimated by the firefighters that on the ground, as well as the 2 survivors on the platform, that the platform was approximately 10 to 15 feet away from the building. Remember, the controls were shut down when this happened, so that's how much force and distance was pent up in the loaded, energy pent up, being held by that concrete parapet wall.
The platform doors, were found in an open position as it swung open away from the aerial, which of course they're not designed to do, and they should not have been able to do that. The doors themselves showed relatively minor damage. They had firefighters tossed against them a couple times. However, there was a strip on the edge of the door, which was designed to prevent the door, so like a jam of sorts. So was to prevent the doors from passing through the side of the platform barrier and opening outwards. So these strips would only allow the doors to open inwards. However, they were bent, and they were bent inwards as the door passed the jam, and so these strips failed. Actually, they failed with the weight and the energy that was being imparted on the firefighters up there. So being thrown against this door defeated these strips that were there to prevent the door from swinging open, and therefore that there was a force applied to the platform that would manage to push the doors beyond their normal stopping point. These strips were about 1.5 inches wide, and there were marks on the railing that showed where the strips contacted against the door frame in the normally closed position prior to the incident, but yet they had been forced past.
When examined by NIOSH investigators after the incident, it was possible to move the front railing portion containing the door frame and the controls approximately 1/2 inch without exerting much pressure on the railing. It is possible that the operator struck the control panel and fell partially over the front railing as he was tossed about inside the bucket. This force moved the door frames on both sides to flex away from the door restraint strip, allowing both doors to be individually forced outward when struck by the victims in rapid succession. The firefighter standing on top of the cab of ladder 1 jumped to the ground to render assistance when he realized the 2 victims were falling to the ground. He fractured his left heel when he landed on the asphalt parking lot. Other firefighters rushed to the aid of the 2 victims who had fallen from the platform. They immediately administered first aid to control bleeding and began CPR on both victims. Medical assistance was summoned via radio. Both victims were transported to the local hospital, where they were later pronounced dead. The firefighter who fractured his heel, assisted with rendering aid to the 2 victims, was later transported to hospital, where he was admitted and received surgery to repair his foot.
These 2 guys fell 8 stories.
Yeah. NIOSH investigators reviewed a PowerPoint presentation of the 8-hour training program that was provided to NIOSH by the manufacturer. this PowerPoint presentation did not mention the need for personnel to use fall protection while working in an elevated platform. NIOSH investigators also reviewed the operator's manual provided by the apparatus manufacturer and noted several areas in the 302-page manual stated the need for personnel to wear protective safety belts. Most obvious was by a warning box located in the aerial safety section, which stated, "Do not allow personnel on the end of a moving aerial unless they are secured to the aerial with a personal protective safety belt."
Some contributing factors: occupational injuries and fatalities are often the result of one or more contributing factors or key events in a larger sequence of events that ultimately result in the injury or fatality. Investigators identified the following items as key contributing factors in this incident that ultimately led to the fatalities. One was unfamiliarity with the controls of a new fire apparatus, training in a high risk situation without adequate familiarization with the fire apparatus, no fall restraint devices in use during training at height, and design of the lifting eyes, one of which snagged on the parapet wall, and platform doors which sprung outward during the incident.
So there's a series of recommendations that also came out of the NIOSH report, and they really all point back to these contributing factors. So recommendation number one was that fire departments should ensure firefighters are fully familiar with new equipment before training under, and particularly from training under high-risk scenarios, let alone operating at emergencies, which actually this department had done.
Right.
Um, I'll talk a little bit after. I'm going to go through this recommendation, but then I have a couple first-hand lessons to relate to you. Modern fire apparatus are complex equipment. I think we can all acknowledge that. And firefighters require considerable knowledge, skills, and abilities in order to properly and safely operate fire apparatus. NFPA 1002, which is the standard for fire apparatus driver operator professional qualifications, this was not a requirement, but it certainly exists and is something that should consider adopting. Anyway, Chapter 5 lists the required knowledge and skills necessary to safely operate fire apparatus equipped with fire pumps. So there's updated versions of these NFPA 1002s, right? So this one here is, would be at least probably 2 revision cycles newer than this one that was in force at the time. In this incident, the fire department had received delivery of a newly manufactured 2008 model 95-foot mid-mount aerial platform. Each of the 3 duty shifts received a factory-authorized training program of approximately 8 hours, including both classroom and practical exercises. Really, these would consist more of a familiarity. And I don't think anybody, even including the factory, would consider these full training syllabuses by any imagination. The hands-on training included raising the aerial platform into the air with firefighters in the platform. After completing the factory training, each shift then practiced and drilled with the new apparatus as time permitted. Firefighters interviewed by NIOSH investigators reported taking the apparatus out in front of the station and setting it up a number of times. They also reported taking the apparatus to a local football field, elevating the platform and flowing water on at least one occasion. So there was no reports of actually using it in conditions similar to what they might use it at in an incident. This was the first platform apparatus utilized by the fire department and was purchased to replace a straight stick 110-foot aerial ladder truck. The electronic over hydraulic controls were completely different than the other fire apparatus in the department. In general, training should reinforce safe practices until they become automatic. Training on the proper method of operating an aerial platform should be done in a low-risk settings. Again, like any other training, you need to plan out the training, looking for the risks, and make sure that you've got adequate supervision. In this incident, the fire department initiated additional training following a structure fire, which this truck was used at, so that the firefighters could gain additional experience in setting up and operating the newly purchased aerial platform apparatus. A number of firefighter interviews by NIOSH investigators reported jerky and unsteady movement of the ladder and platform while operating controls. Again, this is a function of inexperience. The use of a spotter stationed on the roof of the dorm may have aided in guiding the platform operator while the platform approached the building. Again, from a training feedback. Um, in the department I was in, we introduced a 100-foot mid-mount platform that replaced a 75-foot straight stick. And I actually assigned a senior firefighter, who was a captain at the time, senior firefighter, acting captain. Uh, and I think, I'm trying to remember how long the assignment was. It was either 3 or 4 months to put together a complete training package and commissioning plan for this new aerial when it came in. So this was being done before, and it was built off of the manufacturer's detailed maintenance manual, operating manual, and feedback and information from standard procedures and guidelines from other departments. Basically, he did a lot of research, put together a manual that was at least a 4-inch ring binder, complete with multiple PowerPoints and drills and all kinds of other things. And we also assigned people to be the primary operators in a rotating basis, so that the practice had been that whoever the senior firefighter on shift that was assigned to the aerial, he was the operator. So there was people rotating through. And they got away with it with the old aerial, but they couldn't get away with it with this vehicle, keeping in mind that a new vehicle is 15, 20 years more advanced in technology. So a lot of changes. And I think we were pretty close to 6 months before that truck actually went in service. By the time we had actually trained through all the platoons and had enough people that we felt confident there was not going to be a serious hiccup. And it actually worked really well. Although we get comments from counselors, how come that new truck's not in service? And the answer was because it wasn't safe to be in service yet. There were also some teething problems that were discovered, and that was a good place to discover those teething problems. Was during workups, basically, is what it was. So, fair comment here, I think, in the investigators to point out that really this department was not ready to use that aerial at that time, and hadn't really followed everything they could have followed to make a safe training environment.
Recommendation number 2, fire department should ensure fall protection is used whenever firefighters and other personnel are working in elevated aerial platforms. So NFPA 1901, the standard for automotive fire apparatus, as opposed to the non-automotive fire apparatus. The 2003 edition requires the apparatus be equipped with 4 ladder belts before the apparatus is placed in service. NFPA 1500, Chapter 8, states when members are operating from aerial devices, they shall be secured to the aerial device with a system in compliance with NFPA 1983, the standard on life safety rope and equipment for emergency services. Specific ladder belt requirements in NFPA 1983 are found in Chapter 6, while other occupations and industries require full body harnesses as fall protection. Firefighters wearing full turnout clothing and SCBA may find the use of full body harnesses impractical. Firefighters working in elevated aerial platforms should always wear a ladder belt that is attached to the appropriate anchoring point within the platform to protect against inadvertent falls. As part of this investigation, the apparatus manufacturer provided NIOSH with a copy of the PowerPoint used in the 8-hour training program that was provided to the fire department. This PowerPoint did not mention the need for personnel to use fall protection. Investigators reviewed the operations manual provided by the manufacturer and noted several areas where the 302-page manual stated the need for protective safety belts. As we stated before, the most obvious was a warning box located in the aerial safety section, which stated do not allow personnel on the end of a moving aerial unless they are secured to the aerial with a personal protective safety belt.
So safety belts, just I want to comment in here. This is um, fall protection. There's 4 categories of fall protection, and these are important. The first one is called work positioning, and basically that is what the ladder belt is. It's a belt that goes around the waist of the firefighter, and there's a hook. And if you're on a straight aerial ladder, you basically drop the hook over a rung, and you're within like 8 inches. You can't really move anywhere, so you can't fall per se because you're tied in. You're what's called work positioned. So the actual guardrail around a platform on an aerial is considered a work positioning device, provided it is uninterrupted. There's no gaps in it. Now, the problem with that, of course, is there is usually at least three gaps. Brontos are slightly different, but let's ignore them for now because they've only got two. But typically, there's three gaps. You've got an exit door on the left-hand side, you've got an exit door on the right-hand side, and you have the access point where you come in the ladder. So every aerial is slightly different, but essentially you've got breaks in those railings. So, so long as the doors are closed and the mansaver bar is down, you've technically got a continuous guardrail. However, the mansaver bar, I don't think actually meets that. But anyway, so you've got work positioning. The next thing you've got in fall protection is something called travel restraint, which, in other words, prevents you from actually going through a break in a guardrail. And you'll see travel restraint used in construction sites quite a lot where people are tethered, for instance. And that's the same thing with firefighters. You're on a tether that is short enough to prevent you from actually going out of the platform unintentionally. So there really is not a terrific amount of load, but you got to have anchor points. The next one is what's called fall restraint. In other words, you can't fall more than, from your waist downwards. So you can only fall a couple feet. So again, doesn't generate huge amounts of forces. However, in the occupational health and safety regulations and in the states, the OSHA regulations, there's certain loads that are assumed and required, and you've got to be wearing a full body harness for that. A belt is really not adequate. And the last thing is called where am I? Fall restraint. The last one is fall arrest. And fall arrest is where you may fall some distance, and then there's a lanyard back to an anchor point, and that stops you. And that's the worst one because the most amount of force is exerted on the body, and so forth. So you've got issues as to what your aerial is designed for, and there's no aerial that I'm aware of that is designed for fall arrest, and probably not even for fall restraint because the forces are something like 2,000 pounds is the rated anchor point strength. And most aerials, you'd be well into the safety factors before you've accommodated your 2,000 pounds. And if you got another firefighter or two that's in the platform when you fall out, you're going to definitely exceed the design parameters for the aerial. So typically speaking, for aerial platforms, you're looking for a travel restraint is what you're looking for to keep you within the platform. And when you leave the platform, you unbuckle and you go out safely. So there's those types of issues, and firefighters, for the most part, do not understand this because they've not been trained in these areas, and they do not wear the proper equipment. And it's important to have um, ladder belts for travel restraint that integrate properly with your bunker gear, integrate properly with your SCBA. It's unlikely anybody will be up in a tower without wearing SCBA because generally speaking, that's for firefighting purposes. You might be just doing a rescue like off a bridge or something, but then you still need to be wearing a ladder belt and some type of travel restraint or positioning device. And you must also consider that if you do rescue somebody, how are you restraining them? And what we did is we provided extra ladder belts and we bought what were called dog bones, which are very short straps with a carabiner at either end. We put the belt around the waist of the victim and we dog bone them behind their back onto an anchor point. They couldn't get out on their own, and they couldn't fall out on their own either. So keeping in mind that sometimes when you're rescuing people, they're not necessarily, you know, wanting to stay in the platform. They may want to go back to rescue somebody else or their dog or whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway,
good information, Denny. Like the differences between those different types of restraints is very important, and especially if you put any kind of a shock absorbing lanyard or anything with any distance on it, really it's exceeding the capacity of the aerial ladder because it's not designed to have that kind of dynamic load on the anchor points and on the aerial device itself. I know I used to run into issues with this when I started selling ladder trucks back in, I don't know, 2000 and well, heavily in 2005. I started, no, 92, 93, I started selling ladder trucks. And I actually went and bought, because often the trucks you were demoing didn't have belts with them. The one manufacturer from overseas, they always sent belts with the truck. And they were a really nice wide ladder belt with a short 3 foot long rope lanyard that you couldn't, you couldn't go very far. And they used to come with the truck, but the other ones that we typically demoed didn't have any. I went and bought some just rescue escape belts, if you will, that was a heavy duty belt that I wore over my clothes with a short lanyard. And I would take them and do demonstrations with them all the time. Other people would give me a bit of a hard time about doing that because, hey, you're scaring the customer and they don't believe in the product. And I'm going, no, this is just in case something goes wrong. Maybe I'll screw up. Who knows? So and then a few years after I quit selling fire trucks or ladder trucks, or actually I was still selling ladder trucks, this accident happened, and I was
right.
like, wow! And all these years I've been carrying those little belts and using them. Good, might have saved my
But they
life.
but they didn't have new belts. And think about this: your truck is old enough to be replaced, but yet the belts aren't.
Yeah,
So, you
exactly.
know, seems seems a good idea to buy new belts when you buy a new truck.
With the truck, yeah,
Because
exactly.
if the belts had been used like they should have been used, they should be well worn by this point. Even
Yes,
just beating around in a compartment doesn't do the belt any good.
and most likely would have saved these individuals if they'd been wearing a belt or a less restraint, travel restraint.
Unfortunately, so yeah, they'd had a couple bruises, but they'd still be with us.
Recommendation number 3, fire departments should follow standard operating procedures for training, including the designation of a safety officer. In this incident, the entire duty staff shift reported to the college dorm for hands-on training to familiar firefighters with the operation of the new ladder truck. The fire department was in the process of writing new standard operating procedures for the ladder truck, but it had not been completed yet. Hands-on training provided by the manufacturer prior to the incident was conducted without the use of fall protection. That's the key thing there is the hands-on training was conducted without the use of fall protection. Firefighters interviewed by NIOSH reported the informal practice with the new aerial was also conducted without the use of fall protection. A designated safety officer at the training exercise may have positively influenced the use of fall protection during the training exercise. I worked for a rural department, a county, a rural municipality, very large. And the guys were on a little Zoom boom lift or something doing work on one of the buildings. And I'm walking by as deputy fire chief. And I look at these guys and they don't have any fall restraint on. And I promptly told them to guys, like you guys got to put a harness on. You gotta, And they were kind of like, "Good, none of your business. Stay in your lane. It's not a fire." It's like, guys, we work for the same municipality. This is not safe. So you never know what can happen, right?
I would also add in too that you should wear your helmet. If you ever had a carabiner drop on your head from 100 feet, buddy, it's going to hurt.
Yep.
So always wear your
Well,
helmet.
and before we talked, we talked about the before this episode, we talked about the Toronto incident back in about 94. No, before that, 89, 90, where 4 firefighters fell out of a basket of an aerial platform. They didn't fall very far. They were just over the roof of the fire station. But the one firefighter that didn't have his helmet on did pass away. They didn't have belts on. They think the helmet might have helped reduced it. It's same as a motorcycle helmet, right? I mean, the motorcycle crash is bad, but the helmet might keep your head together.
So recommendation number 4 was the fire department should ensure that standard operating procedures covering the operation and use of fire apparatus, particularly including aerial fire apparatus, are developed and followed during training exercises as well as in fire suppression activities. The reason why this is important is because if you don't have these in place, then you don't have a standard book that everybody is running from, a standard set of rules. The fire department was in the process of developing new SOPs to cover the operation and use of this newly purchased aerial platform apparatus. Again, as I commented earlier, this is a completely different animal from what they've been operating before. A copy of the draft SOP was provided to the NIOSH investigators, and this apparatus was recognized as the first aerial platform used by the fire department and was purchased to replace, as we had mentioned earlier, a straight stick aerial. The fire department was using a manufacturer's mid-mount apparatus operator's manual as their basis when they were developing their new SOP.
That goes for anything, though. I mean, anything you do should have an SOP around it. And there's almost no excuse for not having one when you're getting a new truck, because the truck, you bought it. It takes a while to build it. It gives you time to, what manufacturer you bought, what model you bought. You have time to get information and build your SOP and a training program so that when it shows up, your training division people, whether it's a guy or a full-time staff school, has time to say, okay, guys, this is our training. This is how we're going to do it. And every fire department has their own way of doing things. So figure out your way and then teach everybody that way, and then they can do it that way. I've been on fire departments that had very lax SOPs, and it was hard because everybody kind of just did it their way. And then you had to figure out, well, who's running this? Now I got to figure out to do it their way. And anything needs an SOP so that everybody can be on the same page. And in this instance, it comes down to safety, where you need to know what to do, what not to do, and what to watch out for.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, because you're back to the old situation where without an SOP, then every shift does it differently. And, even to the point where people are moving stuff around in the compartments shift to shift to shift. Some people are using belts, some aren't using belts, you know, some, some like there should be a standard procedure, you, you raise, rotate, extend, unraise. I'm losing the word here, but lower. That's
Lower,
the
lower.
yeah. So certain steps that you should normally take, to get the aerial in position, and that way everybody's from the same playbook. Everybody expects the same things, and it's a lot easier to spot something that's not right, not going well when everybody knows what should be going.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of why I chose this episode. Is it happened in January, but also, I mean, it's kind of boring. It's not a fire. It's not as interesting maybe for some of our people, but there's good lessons in here, that it's sort of mundane stuff that we need to make sure everybody knows and does and stuff. So I wanted to cover that, because it was a shocking incident to me when it happened. It's like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't they have belts on? Why were they training in a high risk environment 8 stories up instead of, Doug, you and I did training with Lacombe truck here when they got it. And I mean, we just did the high school or AFSC. It wasn't high. It wasn't like it was a lesser risk. I mean, sure, it's going to hurt, but it might not kill you if something went wrong. Um,
Well, it's a good reminder,
recommendation.
like you said, this isn't a fire. It's a boring training thing, but that's a good reminder for listeners that things can go wrong and get hurt or worse at not just fires. You need to
Badly
be
wrong.
you need to have your wits about you when you're doing training or when you're doing stuff around the fire hall or whatever. It's not only fires where things can go bad.
Yeah, I want to do some other episodes, which actually started me thinking about this whole podcast idea. Was when I used to do aerial training, I said you're most likely to have a problem with your ladder truck when you're not responding to a fire, when you're changing the flag at the flagpole, or putting the lights on the Christmas tree, or doing some demonstration for something, and everybody would go like, well, why is that? Because you don't follow the procedures. You don't set up the way you normally do. You don't do the stuff you always do and you always look for, but you do it differently. I did this Salt Lake City. I did a aerial demonstration on an overpass. They wanted to see how the Bronto would reach down, below grade and stuff. And I just about crushed the chief's car. We were on an overpass, so we were staying to one lane. And I usually put the basket down where I can see it when I put it to the ground if I'm setting it up to do a demo. Well, I couldn't do that because I could have done it to the rear, but there was a fire vehicle blocking traffic behind me, and the chief came to observe, and he parked in front of the fire truck, but I didn't know that. And I was setting the basket down. Luckily, my salesman, because I always had a spotter when I was doing aerial demos, I always designated somebody to be my spotter. And I had my spotter there, and all of a sudden he yells, "Whoa!" And I'm lowering the basket on top of the Chief's car. Luckily, he didn't hit it, but it was a Friday. I always tried not to do demos on Friday because I usually had most of my accidents on Friday.
What
But
color
anyway,
was this, what color was the Chiefs car?
I think it was red and white, Salt Lake City. See, if it was yellow, I would have seen it.
Probably not.
Recommendation 5. That's good. Good one. Recommendation 5. The fire. I did quite a few errors on the demo in Salt Lake City. I slid the truck down a hill. I had it up on the jack. We were trying to see how much of a grade we could do, and I let the front wheels down too much, and the back wheels. The weight was just transferring from the jack pads to the back wheels, which is where the park brakes are. And all of a sudden it starts sliding down the hill. I was using manual control, so I had to crawl in behind the truck and quickly dump the back wheels on the ground to get the brakes to hold because it didn't have a front wheel park brake on the truck. Yeah, it was a bad week. Anyway, they did
How much
buy a
grade can you
Bronco.
do? I'm not sure, but not quite that much.
Yeah, exactly. The fire departments and authorities having jurisdiction should provide fall protection belts with all aerial ladder platform apparatus. Ensure the fall protection is used in both training exercise and emergency response events. The apparatus manufacturer should include the use of fall protection in both demonstrations and training programs. In this incident, the newly purchased apparatus was delivered without fall protection, and that's often done because the manufacturer is worried they won't get the fall protection type you want. Many fire departments use a certain type of a harness or a belt or whatever, and I think that's pretty well why they don't throw something in. It's a part justification anyway. Some departments use ladder belts, some departments use full body harnesses, and some use harnesses built into their turnout gear. Did he shaking his head? He said that is the manufacturer's cop out. Don't give me that.
It's a cop out because the firefighters honestly don't have a clue what they should be wearing in that. I've seen guys on roofs with 15 feet of lanyard going back to the platform because if they fall off the roof, the platform's going to save them. Right.
A
What's going to
large
happen is they're going to land on the ground and the platform's going to land on top of them.
a large department that I know in Western Canada provides an airline on their aerial ladders so that they can stay on the supplied air and get out of the basket. And they always put the airline shorter than the tether that they keep on them when they go. I don't know if they still do it, but that's what they used to do. They were buying airlines, and how long does it need to be? Well, just a little bit longer than the extended tether we give people, so they can get out of the basket and still remain anchored in case the roof collapses. And I'm going, the ladder's not designed for that. If you pendulum shock load a couple of guys off an aerial when the roof collapses, the aerial is probably going to break. But
Yeah, you might get away with it at 80 degrees of elevation, but you're
right
not getting away with it at the typical
at low,
45,
yeah, water
60
rescue,
degree.
right? Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember Houston always used to buy 750-pound tip load aerial ladders, and we asked why. Why do you buy it? It's basically a platform without the basket, and we said it's because of the water rescue. We don't want them. They want to be able to do water rescues in floodwaters, and they want the high tip load at 0 degrees elevation, full extension.
Imagine doing that with a NFPA rated 250-pound tip load straight stick, because I don't even know if that's still the minimum, but it was
It
for a
is.
while.
It is. 250 dry is still the minimum for a ladder for NFPA.
I hope nobody's still ordering those.
Maybe some of the
Eh,
older cities in the northeastern United States because it's a very compact ladder.
Yeah,
I
you
know,
don't want any overweight firefighters.
right? There was an incident years ago in a northeastern city where they have a 250-pound tip load ladder. They did a rescue at a low angle at pretty much maximum extension. One of the engineers for the company I worked for did the math, because when they did the rescue, of course, a lady or person was reaching out the window. They make a leap for the ladder. The firefighter, of course, is going to grab the person that's leaping for the ladder. And what does the other firefighter do? He runs up the ladder to help the firefighter. And they did the math. They said the engineer, who I know well, he worked for many, many years, designer, and he says, I did the math. He says they were this close. Why they didn't tip over? Not quite full extension, not quite 0 degrees. Everything was just right. The way the wind was blowing, who knows where they set the jacks up, but it didn't tip over. Because
Is it?
remember, on an aerial ladder, the stability safety factor is only 1.5 to 1 of
Right.
the rated load.
Right.
And if the ladder is on more than a 3-degree slope or a 5% grade, the safety factor is reduced to 1 1/3. Most operators don't know that if they set up on a grade that's a little bit more than level, they reduce their stability safety factor. So a lot of people don't know that. But anyway, I
And I believe
digress.
those lightweight ladders are intended to be rested against the structure, I believe.
Not really. No NFPA ladders are intended to be rested. European ladders actually are intended to be rested on a structure. They're designed for cantilever operation, whereas North American ladders are not. Just because there's so many variables when you cantilever it on the building. The They'd ordered it. Fall protection belts from the original ladder truck were available, and the new belts for the new platform were on order, but had not yet been delivered to the fire department at the time of the incident. Since fall protection devices and system components are an individual firefighter's integrated personnel protective equipment ensemble and not part of the aerial apparatus, fire departments need to ensure that the apparatus fall protection is used at all times. The fire department or authority having jurisdiction should ensure that personnel are never allowed to operate in or on the aerial ladder without proper fall protection. Fall protection must be easy and quick to don and doff, effective but not hinder movement of the firefighter using the fall protection. Manufacturers of PPE should consider these needs when designing and producing effective fall protection systems for fire service use, and apparatus manufacturers should consider these needs when locating fall protection anchors on aerial devices. Recommendation number 6. Fire apparatus manufacturers should ensure that aerial platforms and other aerial devices are designed to reduce or eliminate the potential for snagging on buildings or other elevated surfaces. Good point, actually, and which I never thought of until I read this report. By design, aerial platform devices may be required to be maneuvered in very close proximity to buildings and structures of different design and construction materials. By necessity, they should be designed to reduce or eliminate the potential to snag or catch on buildings or other structures as the aerial platform is being maneuvered. In this incident, the lifting eyes attached to the waterway underneath the aerial platform snagged on the parapet wall as the platform was being positioned so that firefighters in the platform could access the dormitory building roof. The aerial platform operator leaned out over the front railing in an attempt to determine why the platform would not move, but he could not see the lifting eyes from his location at the control panel. Reducing the potential for snagging, the aerial platform on an elevated surface may have resulted in a different outcome for this incident. It is noted that the operator's manual did include statement to the aerial safety section which read, use of aerial assembly in a cantilevered position only. Do not power the aerial down onto windows or roofs. Position the aerial device at approximately 6 to 12 inches above the structure and allow the weight of personnel to deflect the aerial near the structure. The aerial section is almost like the book was written for a ladder, not a platform, because the weight's already in there. And it said another section there, it said that too, but
They do deflect though.
they do, yep. Do not make contact with any structure using the aerial assembly.
But
Correct.
fundamentally, let's remember why he put it so close to the parapet, because it was too far to step off to get onto the roof.
Right.
And I know the last aerial platform that I bought, um, it actually, we had I think it was a 10-foot straight ladder that we kept on the outer fly. And
Yep.
there were actually brackets on the side of the platform that you could clip the ladder onto the side of the platform and climb down. And I know there is a brand that provides a short ladder kind
Yep.
of permanently
Hmm.
attached to the front of the platform where you can climb out and climb down also. But
Yes.
parapets are definitely an issue, and I think that this incident might not have occurred if it had been more of a, a flush roof with, uh, you're never flush. There's always a curb around the edge of it, but a
Hmm.
much lower curb. It's the parapet that's the issue. But a lot of large buildings and commercial buildings in particular have a parapet, and they have a parapet because the roofs are designed to carry the snow and water loads towards a certain direction, usually a drain, other
A
such a
drain.
drain.
Yeah.
So you got it. Your SOPs have got to have provisions for getting off the aerial when it is above a parapet, and you could typically be talking, because they're saying 6 to 12 inches. That's a foot. Typical parapet, couple feet. You're talking
Yeah.
3 feet. So getting down full bunker gear, getting off of a platform, when really, you're jumping half your height down with your tools and your air pack and everything else. It's a significant. You could hurt yourself,
Yeah.
particularly
That's
poor
that's
visibility.
That's why
So
personally I have a bit of a soft spot for the articulating platforms, whether that be an aerial with an articulating tip, which is extremely popular in Europe. There's only
yep,
one brand right now in North America. There used to only be one brand before, and it went away. And there is one brand in North America now that sells that articulating tip on an aerial
yeah,
ladder platform.
yeah,
In Europe, they are very common. Or of course the closed box beam, Bronto, T-Rex, etc. type
yeah,
Rosenbauer with the 20-foot jib on
yeah,
the end. I really find that it's a for application for firefighting and rescue. It's a better application. Are
yeah,
the trucks more money? Yes. Are they more complex? Yes. Do they require more maintenance? Probably yes. So,
yeah,
but those are all. But why are
yeah,
we here? We're here to
yeah.
manage the risk, and
Yeah.
that's why I like
I mean,
those.
some platforms are designed where you can rotate the platform slightly left and right
Hmm.
to take
Hmm.
one of your exit doors, which is off at an angle, and line it up with your parapet so you can step off onto the parapet and climb down the parapet, similar to what you would do with a straight stick aerial, where you would put your aerial up close to the parapet and climb off onto the parapet and climb down inside. But with a normal platform where your doors don't quite come out straight and there's no really provisions for getting off of it. And the platform itself can be a foot or two thick, give or two, because you've got a waterway under there, you've got structure under there. You've got your plates that you're standing on, you've got your lower skirt, you've got your underspray and so forth. It can be a 3 or 4 foot step off, which is too much. So you
Hmm.
need to
Yep.
have some way of getting off of that. And if you haven't pre-planned this, written it into your SOPs, your operator is going to try and alleviate that. Imagine doing this in the dark, in the smoke, the heat of the moment, in the middle of the night. Somebody's going to get hurt if you haven't figured out how to do this in a safe way beforehand.
And I always tried to train if I'm going to a roof or a parapet or anything, I always would elevate and extend over it, and then I would retract down to the roof, not lower to the roof because of that compound angle you have when you're lowering or elevating, you're moving in two directions. Whereas if you just get positioned to a static position and then just retract, which is shortening the ladder, you're really only going in one direction
Right.
mostly. So I would
Yeah.
usually train that way
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But
SOPs again, but I'm pretty sure that this department ordered this mid-mount aerial specifically because of this 8-story building.
potentially
Right.
would be one of
But
the reasons anyway. Yeah.
but this aerial for this building was probably just marginally long enough.
Hmm. But try to find a 110-foot platform. They don't exist unless
Yeah.
you buy something a little more exotic. That's
Yeah.
another discussion we had a long time ago was high aerials in North America and why does the rest of the world buy 150, 180, 200-foot aerials in North America says we don't need them. So we also have two exit stairways on all our tall buildings, so it's part of the
Yep.
difference.
Yep.
The last recommendation, of course, was about the gates, the inward opening platform doors. They were not supposed to open outward. On this incident, the platform doors included retraining strips that were intended to keep the doors from swinging outward past the integral guardrail surrounding the platform. During this incident, both platform doors were sprung outward past their intended stopping point, resulting in the victims falling through the openings in the platform guardrail. The retaining strips on both doors were visibly bent after the incident, with wider retaining strips at the top and/or additional restraining strips below the door latch may have served to keep the doors from moving past their intended stopping point. The platform doors were equipped with simple spring-loaded latches. That a use of a different type of a latch that was more engaging may have added strength to that center section, such as one requiring a turn or twisting motion to open the latch may have prevented the doors from opening inadvertently.
Clearly, the manufacturer did not anticipate this type of loading. But if you look at the OSHA requirements for the kick plate, the mid rail, and the top rail of any what they call a work positioning system, guardrail system, those are minimums. And really, you need to understand that in a case like this, you might have thrown 2 or 3 people against the railing. In fact, you threw 4 people against the railing in this case. And that's a lot of force and clearly overwhelmed the design of this particular platform.
Yep. Yeah, it's clearly what happened. Not sure. I imagine that was all looked at after the fact, and it's just these things can happen. We wanted to point it out to people,
Yep.
um, to wear your safety belts if you're in a dangerous area like this.
We wouldn't be talking about this now if that had happened that day.
Yep, exactly.
So I just wanted to also point out that if if people are interested in reading more about fall protection from aerial devices, they should Google Ontario firefighter guidance notes. And there's quite a bit there. There's guidance note 411 specifically addresses falls from aerial devices, protection for falls from aerial devices. But there's also another guidance note there that just talks about fall protection in general for firefighters. It's good reading. Not every province has taken the initiative. Not every province has taken the initiative to to have firefighters advising the government on how to interpret occupational health and safety regulations, as Ontario has. And I know if you live outside of Ontario, a lot of people cringe when they hear Ontario does it this way. But honestly, there's there's a lot of work and has gone into this. I know myself, I served on the committee for 6 years, and there's a lot of really good thoughts, and it's a good place to start from when you're writing an SOG. And in fact, I think these are SOPs, not even Gs. These aren't guidelines. These are procedures to protect yourself. And anyway, Google Ontario firefighter guidance notes. There's quite a number of them, and they're well worth reading.
Thanks. Yes, absolutely. Guidance is needed. I know the debate about ladder belts versus full body harnesses too. One department I know had got a ruling in Alberta. I didn't see it, but that's what they told me, that if you're not wearing SCBA, a ladder belt was okay, or waist belt only was okay. If you're wearing an SCBA, you should wear a full body harness because of the danger of inversion, when if you were to fall out, because the center of gravity on the body on the person has been changed, and you're most likely to fall out.
Tied off to what?
A restraint device, short.
Travel restraint, you're never going to get inverted. The worst that can happen is you're going to get inverted onto your butt sitting on the floor of the platform.
Good point. So if you're not going beyond 3 feet, you don't need the full body harness. The ladder belt is
And,
fine, which is
and
easy to
if
use.
and the only thing I would caution there, and I did a large presentation for this at an occupational health and safety conference, was the fact that you've got to look inside platforms. There are different places where the anchors are. Some of the anchors are right near the exit door. And right near the exit door, a 3-foot harness is too long. A 3-foot harness is too long if you're tied off near the exit door. If you're tied off at the back of the platform, 3 foot's about right. So what we did is we had endless loops. And when you're tied off at the front of the platform, you double the loop back. So you clip it with a carabiner at either end. And so hence you've got a short tether. And then if you're tied in at the back of the platform, you just single it up to a single loop. Now you've got your long tether. You don't need an extra set of tethers.
I saw
So
that in those pictures that you sent me today. Is that I wondered why the 2 carabiners and the webbing. Okay, that makes sense. I like it.
simple.
Is that available, that PowerPoint, on the website you talked about? The
No,
OSHA? No. Okay.
no, no,
Is it
no.
shareable?
Yeah, should be.
Yeah. So if someone wants a PowerPoint presentation, they can get a hold of us and we can send it to them
Yep, we'll do
for
that.
fall arrests and stuff. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another emergency traffic podcast. We appreciate your interest and hope that you find these interesting and informative. Give us a like, a star, a thumbs up on the app you use to listen to these. They mean a lot. Give us your feedback if you have any opinions on this or any other subject. We love to talk to you and hear from you. Thank you very much.